Good to see everybody. Hope you're having a good day. Here in Colorado, it is beautiful and sunny. So it's easy to be positive, easier to be positive on such a bright, sunny day. So today we're going to talk about the positivity bias towards people who are differently abled, sometimes called disabled, but the positivity bias that we're exploring today that we learned from the Lubavitcher Rebbe is how to look at these individuals as simply differently abled than the rest of us. Uh, so the story goes back the late 1970s. Up until that point, individuals with disabilities were institutionalized. They just sent them away, said, get out of our neighborhoods, go somewhere safe. And that's where they took care of them. And in the late 1970s, there was a movement that individuals with disabilities should be kept in their homes, in their communities, and educated there. The whole concept of a group home was, began at that time in the late 70s. So an individual, Professor Wilkes, who was very involved from the Jewish standpoint, Jewish organizations, he asked the Lubavitcher Rebbe for his opinion on this. And that's where the Rebbe showed us his positivity bias, and it's something that we can definitely learn in regards to how we relate to others with disabilities and how we relate to everyone and how we relate to ourselves. And the Rebbe was pointing out that if someone is limited in an ability, if we see someone as disabled, they're simply limited in an ability to absorb and assimilate knowledge, if it's a cognitive disability. But in other areas, they could be average or above average. And the same goes for other areas. If someone has a limitation in one specific area, then it just affects that one area. But in other areas, then they can be like everybody else or better than everyone else. So when we look at the word disabled, we often think of it as one who has a lack of. But really, we all have a lack of something in one area. We all have one area in our life. If it's emotional regulation, if it's the ability to remain positive, if it's something, we can be limited in a certain physical area. There are so many areas that every person really has one where they have a lack of. And we can have a lack of in one area, but then we have another area in our lives where we excel. And the question is what we're going to focus on with ourselves and with others. Are we going to focus on this one area that there's a lack of, this disability, or are we going to focus on the other areas? And when we start defining ourselves by our strengths, then we end up revealing that aspect in ourselves. We reveal that potential. And the same goes with others. When we start looking at their potential and we start looking at their strengths, then we end up revealing it. And that's what we're going to see in them. And it's amazing because this is something that the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote in the late 1970s, and the entire field of special education and serving individuals with disabilities has undergone incredible change, thankfully, thank God, for all those positive changes. But this is one area where, as a parent of a child with autism, I see that we still have a lot to grow. And I want to read from the book Positivity Bias, just this one paragraph, where the Rebbe said that we have to look at every individual's strength and educate them in that area. So the Rebbe said, needless to say, such an educational method would greatly enhance their self confidence and general development, not to mention also the fact that it would enable them to make an important contribution to society. And this is something that I've noticed. We get let down. I think we get discouraged when we're working on something that we're not good at, and we have to work on it over and over and over again, and it gets a little discouraging. And when we do something that we rock at, that we're amazing at, then we feel emboldened to keep going and do more. And individuals, I'm going to say specifically even children, young adults with disabilities or different abilities, as we said in the beginning, when they spend a majority of their day struggling in areas that they just have less of an ability than others, it's so hard. It's so hard for them to just remain positive and optimistic. When you give them ability to shine in the areas that they're amazing at, then they become so much more motivated. And this is what the Rebbe is telling us. And this is that, for anyone who's in the field or anyone who knows someone with disabilities, different abilities, then let's think about that. Let's give them an opportunity to grow their strengths, to show their strengths. And like we said, even with all of us, we have to always have that balance of working to fix the areas that need fixing, but then growing our strengths, growing our positive aspect of ourselves. And the best part of this is that all of a sudden we have this, like, it gets flipped on its head, the way we see things. What we're saying is that these individuals with disabilities, we need them as much or maybe even more than they need us, because they have an area, they have a strength that we don't have. What I think is amazing in Israel, in the IDF and Israeli army, it's such a large part of life in Israel. Everyone who turns 18 drafts and goes into the army. So for individuals with various disabilities, it gets a little, they feel left out when their older siblings go and join the IDF and they don't. So they have a unit for people with autism where they look at satellite images, and they compare satellite images from, let's say, 3 months ago to a satellite image now. And because individuals with autism have this crazy, incredible, uncanny ability to see tiny details, so they can spot a difference, and they can say, oh, look, over here in this area, in this Palestinian area, I see a small, tiny speck of a difference. And it could be an indication of a satellite, of a rocket launching site. And they took these individuals with autism, made them feel valued, and now they're contributing to society. They're contributing in a way that all of us can't. So when we look at others and see what strengths they have that we don't, we bring it out, we reveal it in them. Um, Another amazing example is there are the injured soldiers in the IDF. In Hebrew, they're called the Nechei Tzahal, the disabled soldiers, the disabled veterans. And years ago, they had a trip. Every year, they do trips to the United States for them for the Paralympic Games. And one year when they came, there was this young man, Joseph, who was in this group of injured IDF soldiers. And he said how when he went to meet with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe looked in his eyes, and he said for the first time he saw empathy. And so many others up until that point, when he looked at his eyes, some, unfortunately, he said he felt like he saw they had some revulsion in their eyes, and seeing someone who was physically deformed. But he said others looked at him with pain or with pity. And the Rebbe looked at him with empathy. And I just found that so powerful, because it's hard when when we look at someone with pity, it's a reflection of the fact that we're looking at the areas where they're lacking, and therefore we pity them. But we can look at someone with empathy and say, we see that you're struggling. And at the same time, we look at all the amazing attributes that they have and how they can contribute to society in a way that we can't. And really, that's how it goes, because whatever area we're missing in, let's say if we're missing one limb, somebody who's missing one limb, they end up with superpowers almost to be able to overcome and rise above that challenge. So we all have that. We have those areas where we're lacking. God gave us some incredible ability in another aspect that we have, in another one of our capacities, and we can rise above those challenges. And we just have to, it's up to us. We have to access it. We have to activate the powers, but they're there and we have them. And in the Torah, we're told of the story of Jacob, Yaakov, and how he wrestled with the angel. And after wrestling with the angel, he walks away and he has a new name. Before he was Yaakov, and now he was called Israel, and he has a new mission too. And we know that part of the story. I don't know how many of us remember the part of the story that Jacob, as a result of that fight with the angel, was physically injured and he was left with a limp. So we have to remember that there are both parts to that story. As a result of being left with a physical injury, Jacob also had a new name, new powers, and a new mission. And that's what we have to channel. We have to remember that whatever area we are lacking and others with disabilities are lacking, that they were given some incredible power, some incredible strength to overcome it and a way to contribute to society. And let's look at people that way, and we'll be able to bring that out in them. And I want to dedicate today's little inspiration session to Gershom Sable. So Gershom Sable was the CEO of a large organization in Muncie, New York. I know here in Colorado they're called CCBs, for anyone who knows, Community Centered Boards, an agency that provides services for individuals with disabilities. So they have all the therapists and providers, and individuals with disabilities turn to the agencies to help provide them with anyone, any therapist that they need. So Gershon was the CEO of a very large organization called Yudei Chesed. And don't remember how many years ago, about 12 years ago, I'd say 12, 13 years ago, when Yitzi was young and we were new to the whole world of autism and special needs. And I'll be honest, we were struggling. It was really, really difficult. And aside from all the difficulties that there are, there's that extra challenge that we, as observant Jews here in Boulder, it was hard for other providers to just really get our lifestyle. Being rabbi and rebbitzin, we also have that extra dynamic that people turn to us and we need to be there for them. So to show our weaknesses, you can't really turn to your community in those moments. And so my dear husband was very involved in creating an organization. He and a few other people had this idea. He recruited a couple of friends, other parents of children with special needs, and just other friends who were committed people, had some business know-how, just people ready to get the work done. And I said, okay, let's start this organization to serve the Chabad rabbis and rebbitzins around the world who have children with special needs. So they all had a commitment, but they needed someone with know-how that actually knows how to service families that have children with special needs. So they turned to Gershom Sable, and he voluntarily took on the role to take this fledgling organization and turn it into something real. And he was the one that just mentored everybody and continued until his last day to mentor the people running the organization. And he was also available at any time for people like me to call him and reach out to him and say, like, Gershom, what do we do in a given situation? And now looking back, I'm amazed that he was so busy and yet he made the time to take a call from someone like me when I was freaking out about something and to encourage and to guide. And yesterday, unfortunately, Gershon passed away at a very young age of 64 from this horrific coronavirus that is taking too many people who we need. And I want to dedicate this concept of looking at individuals with disabilities and looking at their potential. I want to dedicate this to his memory. And really, all of us should take inspiration from his life in looking at people's potential and also to share our knowledge, share what we have. And we can be busy, have full lives, but make the time to help others, because even now, even if due to all the financial recession, we won't have financial resources to help, we all have personal resources that we can share and contribute to make others' lives so much easier. So I would love if we can all do that in Gershon's memory, to just keep helping others in any way we can. And I'll end with one line. So, we all have our epiphany moments in our lives. And my epiphany moment with Yitzi was on a phone call with Gershon. And I called him because I was getting phone call after phone call from the school. And Yitzi was in an autism program in Boulder Valley School District. So he was served by a great school, great team, but they still had challenges with him, and they would call me. And I remember one time I called Gershon and I said, okay, if my son had a physical illness and we wouldn't be satisfied with our local doctors, we would go wherever we can around the world and find a top doctor to fix this problem. And so I said to Gershom, who is the top specialist in the world in autism? Where do we have to go? What do we have to do to fix this problem? I said, because I keep getting calls from school. And he said, Mrs. Wilhelm, your son has autism. You're always going to get calls from school. And that was my epiphany moment of acceptance and realizing that we can't always fix every problem. And of course, we know once there's acceptance, then we're able to work with what could be fixed. It was my serenity moment, I guess, in accepting that which couldn't be changed. And then I was able to focus on what could be changed. And I feel like that goes along with this whole concept of this positivity bias that yes, while we can accept the areas of a person with disabilities that can't be changed, we should still be motivated and empowered to change that which we can, and give them incredible tools to grow their strengths. And we'll be amazed at how they can contribute to society. And I think if we do that with others, we'll see it in ourselves. And if we start doing that with ourselves, accepting our potential and recognizing our potential, then we'll be able to do it with others. And we'll see amazing things from all of us. So, L'chaim, good to see you all.
Hello, everybody. We're here for our day.